She does kill her husband. She does. It's sad. Murder is bad. But murder is bad, okay? This video practically can't be jump started, if we do not sing a song with the word fall in the title, like we did for the spring reading list. I fall in love too easily. Good old Chet Baker. That's all I know. Nothing comes up from that song. Today I'm going over my winter reading list. I wish I could tell you the vibe that we have in plan for this fall winter. I can't, because I don't have one. The vibe doesn't exist. I haven't read as much as I wanted to this year. And while reading shouldn't be some like goal-based hobby that you have, I realized recently not reading makes me dumber. I will go to like try to write something and the words, it won't even escape me. They simply won't be there. An array of different vocabulary words aren't being jumbled around in my brain anymore. And it is making me dumber. It is. Reading now feels like this thing that I have to do. And it's really not in like an unhealthy way. I'm not doing it to like police myself or like anyone else around me. It just feels like something that like is very crucial to my intellectual ability. Not reading makes me feel very dumb. And the only reason why I haven't been doing it is because of one, pure laziness, but also there really hasn't been a book that I've read that has captured me. I've been DNFing a lot of books lately, and I think that the cause of this like semi-reading slump, I think I need to get back to reading things that I really, really like. I was looking back at some of my old reads and read books that I just like really just like kind of like swallowed up. Have you ever been swallowed up? Books that I just like really, really enjoyed, and I think I have to go back into that. One book that I really, really liked was Confessions by Kane Minato. Such a good Japanese thriller, mystery, whatever. My vibe for this winter is just to read what I like. I really wanted to diversify my reading taste, and I still do by reading classics and just branching out. I'm reading Crime and Punishment right now. It is my first Jesus Christ. It is my first Dostoevsky. That is the most unenjoyable book I've ever read in my life. It is. I'm sorry. 60 pages in, nothing's happening yet. There are so many new characters. I've started just like taking notes. We're not going to get into that. This is my winter TBR. This is what we're going to be reading, as well as some other books that are going to be left primarily for certain videos. But this is what I want to read for pleasure, and I will read these books. The first book is We Laughed in Pleasure by Lou Sullivan. This is a collection of diary entries by Lou Sullivan, who was a pioneering transgender man and a gay activist. This book chronicles his personal experiences from his adolescence, which was in the 60s, to his death, which I believe was in the 90s. He did die from AIDS-related complications. I am a sucker for a diary entry based book, whether it's fiction, whether it's a memoir, it doesn't matter. In this book, he really explores his journey with himself and his gender identity, his sexuality, all the things that come with being a queer man and self-discovery. Some of these diary entries also capture and go into his activism in the trans community. I have heard that this book is spicy, lots of sex. Am I reading it for the sex? Well, no, but I consider that to be like a little treat. It's like the cherry on top. Seems like a very good read. My hope with the books in this list is that they're compelling enough for me to not DNF. I don't like to DNF books. It feels like a personal failure of some sort, but I don't think I'll be DNFing any of these. The next book is The Devotion of Suspect X by Kaigo Higashino. I've already read one of his pieces. It was for when I did a celebrity book club type-esque sort of series. It primarily was around K-pop idols, and this was one of Yeti's favorite books, Yeti from Red Velvet. I read what I believe was Malice. It was the very first one in the series. That was so good. It was about like a very successful and prolific author who is about to relocate to Vancouver from Japan for like a new job or something with his wife, and then he gets murdered. There's two suspects who have really good alibis, his wife and his best friend growing up, but you very quickly realize like who did it, and the relationship between the man and his best friend is a lot more complicated than you think it is, and it's just that unraveling. That was the very first, I think that's like the very first mystery that I've read, and I don't know why I haven't gone back to mysteries. I love a mystery. I love that book. Japanese lit is like one of my favorite subgenres. I think it's always done and translated so well. It's so compelling. And when I was looking back at my past reads, I was like, why don't I read another Higashino piece? Like, that doesn't make... Anyway, The Devotion of Suspect X is a mystery that dives into the life of a very smart, like, genius, brainiac math teacher, and then his neighbor. His neighbor, I think, is a woman who is suffering from domestic violence, and her main priority each and every single day is keeping her daughter safe. She does kill her husband. She does. It's sad. Murder is bad. But murder is bad, okay? And when this woman commits this crime, murder is still a crime, the math teacher steps in to help cover it up. He uses his like wit and his intellect to stay one step ahead from the authorities throughout a lot of the book, I'm assuming. But there is a very smart detective who is on the other end, very quickly uncovering his pieces, develops into a game of cat and mouse. Tell me that doesn't sound so much fun. That sounds like a romp. That sounds so good. Ooh, that sounds so good. Ooh. I'm reading a little bit of a synopsis. The book is packed with clever twists and explores deep themes like sacrifice and obsession, making it a thrilling and thoughtful read. Hey, yeah, I bet. If you have any mysteries or thrillers, I would love... Please comment them down below. Any recommendations? Please. I'm begging you, please, actually. The next book is You Are Having a Good Time by Amy Baradell. I'm actually reading this book right now. This is a collection of short stories. It's for a book video that I'm very excited to do. I'm very excited. I have to read eight books for it, which kind of sucks, but I'm really excited. This is a quirky collection of dark, offbeat short stories that dive into the awkward, uncomfortable side of human relationships. I've read 3 stories so far. One is about a guy who develops a relationship with a girl that he met at a party, but he doesn't remember her. Initially, they're talking over the phone. She lives about 5 hours away through train, and then he finally meets her. When he does meet her, it's a little bit weird. She was a character. Another story is about like an actress who is dealing with like her very complicated feelings towards a very weird, mean, abusive director. The characters often deal with things that induce a lot of emotional turmoil, like love, sex, relationships. And I think the book is just highlighting how individualized and like irreverent, but also just like difficult those things can be, and how it's just hard. Like managing interpersonal relationships, that wasn't a word. Managing interpersonal relationships is just something that can be very, very difficult and very weird and very strange at times. And I think that's what this book highlights. I like it so far. I don't find it that compelling. I'm realizing that I'm not as big as a fan of short stories as I think I am, just because it takes a lot for me to really get into a story, and I become so invested when the story so abruptly ends. And I know that's the point of a short story, like, duh, obviously. The story between the guy and the girl that he met talking on the phone, I really would have liked to see that more fleshed out. And I think having that be cut off or just like abruptly just stopped does something for me that I don't really like that much. I'll have more to this book for the video, whatever, move on. Next is The Bluest by Toni Morrison. This tells the story of Pekala, who is a young black girl in 1940s Ohio. The story is based on a young black girl's fixation with having blue eyes. Obviously, like you and I think can very quickly uncover and decipher the fact that she doesn't really want blue eyes. She's talking about and expressing her desire to fit the mold of a Eurocentric beauty standard. I think she's not speaking directly. I'm pretty sure the things that happened to her and like her sentiments towards outwardly image and like beauty standards are retold by the people in her life, like the people who exist in her community. Question mark? Or I don't really know. I don't really know. But she becomes obsessed with white beauty standards and really like delving into lookism and colorism, believing that if she was white, her life would be better. People would treat her better. People would love her. This seems like a very heavy read. I've already read Morrison. I've read Sula by Morrison. This will be my second Morrison piece. I don't have to tell you that Toni Morrison is a good writer. Like, fork found in kitchen. You know what I mean? I'm very, 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 very excited to read this book. Very excited. I'm sure what awaits me is going to be like literary paradise, but I also can't wait to see the way Morris Morrison expresses these really heavy and deep and dark themes like colorism, self-worth, trauma, and just like the way you are othered and regarded as someone who doesn't fit the beauty standard. And like look at me. Like, obviously that's going to be my cup of tea, because I do think it's one thing when these ideals are projected onto you, but I really am excited to see what it's like to have it be internalized racism and like all the isms and colorism and like lookism, all of that. So I'm very excited for this book, very excited. I'm sure it's going to like tear me up. Next is I Hope This Finds You Well by Natalie Sue. This I'm also very, 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 very excited for. I think I'm going to read... You know, you have a good TBR when you genuinely don't know what to read next. This is about an associate in a corporate position. Her name is Jolene, and at her job there's like an IT mix-up, and she suddenly has access to her entire department's private messages and emails. She knows she should report it, but hey, guess what? She doesn't. Would I do the same? Yeah. Now, okay, no, actually, no, I really don't want to know what people are saying about me. When I had my corporate job, I was like walking on eggshells all the time because I was just like, I don't really belong here. That was a story from that. Move on. However, she discovers that layoffs are coming, and now having this like very, 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 very dangerous but like insane resource under her belt, she is, looking through her bosses and her coworkers' private messages, figuring out how to save herself from layoffs that are very impending. She devises a plan to really win her boss's favor and really get on the good side of upper management and HR. I don't know, this seems insane. I think this really speaks to a certain part of me that has now experienced like true corporate, like true 9-to-5 corporate. I think there's like such an unspoken, very rigid and strange dynamic that is like interlocked in between every single corporate setting. It's a lot of like fucking stupid corporate jargon, very strange formalities and niceties. It's a lot of like unsaid and unknown. You're like, I don't know. I think there's like a workplace romance that's also takes place in this book that I don't really care that much about. I really want to know how the fuck she gets through this, because that's crazy. It's also just like, if anyone finds out that you knew, hey, guess what? Immediate termination. Immediate. Okay, next we have The Sluts by Dennis Cooper. Next we have The Sluts by... Okay, my battery died, so I went and had breakfast. This is a book that I already attempted to read. However, I did DNF it. I got to a good, considerable amount, but then I just kind of stopped reading. And then I did that thing where it's like, well, I kind of read it anyways, but I really didn't. I had like a little bit more than half remaining. I'm gonna try to read this book again. I believe in this book. Me and this book, we're gonna get back together. This novel was published in 2004. It's about an online community, and they're discussing a male sex worker whose name is Brad. It's a story of his sexual escapades, but mainly kind of like the freaky, very weird things that his clients are into, and the things that as a sex worker he's subjected to. There's just a lot of gossip and fodder and speculation going around this figure who is Brad. Spoiler alert, half of the stories are deemed as false. Next we have Butter by Asako Yuzuki. This is about the story of a gourmet cook. Her name is Kaji, who is convicted of several murders of very lonely businessmen. Allegedly, she lures them into her place under the guise of like, I'm sure, her sexuality and her femaleness and just being like a woman. But I think it's under the guise of like the fact that she's gonna cook them a meal, and then she kills them. She kills them. Even though there's a lot of press surrounding her, in this case, she refuses to speak to press until there's a certain journalist whose name is Rika, who writes her asking for a recipe for her beef stew. And surprisingly, Kaji writes back. I think they meet, and then the relationship between them obviously becomes closer. I'm gonna make some shit up. I'm gonna do what I do, is make some shit up, and I'm going to predict that this journalist is trying to get like closer to really figure out what is happening and if this chef really did kill these men. And I think she's gonna very stupidly and sillily eat her cooking. I don't know what's gonna happen to her. I think she's gonna kill her. I hope that's what happens. I'm mostly here to enjoy myself by Glynis McNichol. Oh, is she the character? Is she the main character? The character's name is Glennis McNichol. This is about a woman in her mid-40s who is unmarried and has no children, and she lives in New York. This is unfortunately a COVID book. It takes place in the pandemic. I like contemporary reads, but like that's a little bit, that's too modern for me. I really don't like my stories to like even like mentioning like an iPhone in them. You show me right now, you show me right now. Supersonic. She spends 16 months alone in her New York City apartment, and the isolation has very obviously and noticeably gotten to her. She gets the chance to sublet a friend's apartment in Paris, and she very quickly jumps on it. I'm gonna read a little bit of the synopsis here. It says, what follows is a decadent, unexpected journey in one woman's pursuit of radical enjoyment. I'm assuming that the 16 months of isolation has really led her to want to follow kind of like hedonism. I'm sure she's been deprived of like so much that she just wants to enjoy everything in full with no inhibitions. And I think that's what she does in Paris. It says the weeks in Paris are filled with friendship and food and sex. There's dancing on the Seine, a plethora of gooey cheese. I don't like the word gooey. Midnight bike rides through empty Paris, handsome men, afternoons wandering through the empty Louvre, nights time swimming in the ocean off a French island, and yes, plenty of nudity. That sounds like a vibe. I think I'm gonna reserve this book for like the dead of winter, when absolutely nothing brings me dopamine or serotonin or enjoyment. And I think I'm gonna reserve this for when I want to like live out truly like my wildest fantasies and really like indulge in escapism, because this seems really fun. I want this to be like really raunchy and like really awesome. Hey, guess what, guys? Guess what? Jess has a physical book. I know. One of the books that's on my TBR, I have. I know, I'm just as surprised as you are. This is Angels in America by Tony Kushner. I first watched the miniseries, which is on HBO, one morning when I was taking out my hair. That series changed my life, and I think that is one of my favorite pieces of media literally ever. This is a 2-part play. The first part is called Millennium Approaches, and then the next part, I think this is a Russian word, perestroika. So this play follows the lives and narratives of several different characters and the way their lives and situations and circumstances intertwine with one another. It's primarily like one gay and one straight couple in Manhattan. The gay couple's name is Pryor and Louis. Pryor discovers that he is diagnosed with, I don't know if it's HIV or AIDS at this point, but because of it, him and Louis break up. The feeling of having a partner who is actively dying of AIDS is too much for Louis, and Pryor knows this, and he doesn't want Louis to suffer through this. Then comes in a straight couple, Joe and Harper. Joe is not straight. He's a Mormon. He's closeted. He's like a Republican, political, whatever. And then he begins a very salacious homo affair with Louis. But when they first started interacting, I was like, they're gonna get together. And then they got together, and I was like, oh, you guys should stop this. Joe's working for a very powerful lawyer and broker who's played by, who's that man? Is that Robert De Niro? Robert Shapiro. That's not it at all. He's played by this guy. I don't know who that is. I'm sorry. Sorry to this man. Joe's mother, whose name is Hannah, is involved. She begins a very strange relationship with Pryor. She's like a very devout, conservative Mormon. These like very unlikely characters get together in a way that is so compelling, but then it doesn't even stop there. We haven't even gone to service. It's not like a very like human stories and like personal narratives. Supernatural beings and deceased people, ghosts, are also intercepted and like interjected into the stories. Themes and narratives such as like religion and like conservatism and like just religious theology are mentioned and included in a way that's very compelling, but also like tasteful. It doesn't feel like it's shoving anything down your throat. I'm so excited. I'm gonna take like a million notes, and I got this on eBay for $3. Immediately after when I figured out that this was a play, I needed it. I went on eBay and I got this, and it was $3, and I genuinely couldn't be happier. Lastly, we have The Death and Life of Great American Cities by Jane Jacobs. This is nonfiction. Whoa. This is a critique of urban planning practices in the mid-20th century. This book highlights how cities thrive when people interact, and the built environment encourages connection. It's a classic that reshaped how we think about cities and their design. That sounds awesome. This has been on my TBR for a very long time. Okay, that's my winter TBR. I'm going to read all of these books. I think it's very good. This was a good quantity, and I'm genuinely excited about all of these. I almost don't know what to read next. I think I'm gonna read The Bluest. Let me know what's on your phone for TBR. Maybe I'll add it to mine. Goodbye. Check out my Substack, please, if you want. Please.